What kind of crime could a person have committed that, after his death, people of the time preserved his body as a specimen and displayed it in a museum for nearly 100 years? Even today, his skull still lies quietly in the Ripley's, believe it or not, museum in Wisconsin Dells, as if watching everyone who dares approach, whispering a bone-chilling history. Who exactly was he? And what did he do that made Germans unwilling to let him go even after death? He was Peter Kürten, Germany's first officially recognized serial killer, historically known as the Vampire of Düsseldorf. In that era, his name hung over the entire city like a shadow. Countless people were so terrified by his existence that they didn't dare step outside for years. At night, the streets were completely deserted, and everyone prayed in hushed voices that they would not become the next target. People said Kürten seemed able to see straight into the deepest fears of your heart, slowly devouring your hope in the coldest ways imaginable. His atrocities were so horrific that even after his death, they remain impossible to forget. Today, let us step by step enter one of Germany's top 10 unsolved criminal cases, the Vampire of Düsseldorf, and uncover the suffocating, horrifying truth behind this killer. Peter Kürten was born on May 26, 1883, in Mülheim, Germany. His father was a sand molder and his mother a typical housewife. There were 10 children in the family and Peter was the third. During his childhood, his father's despicable behavior had an especially profound influence on him. One could even say it indirectly created the future Vampire of Düsseldorf. Peter's father was a complete bastard, a heavy drinker who routinely beat his family and even committed unspeakable acts against his eldest daughter. Growing up in such an environment, Peter became morally twisted from a very young age, and his character was even more depraved than his father's. At just 9 years old, he committed an act so cruel it defies imagination. On one occasion, while playing near the water with other children, Peter suddenly pushed one of them into the river. Originally, this was nothing more than a cruel prank without boundaries, and Peter had intended to pull the child back out with a bamboo pole. However, when he saw his playmate struggling helplessly in the water, he felt an inexplicable sense of excitement. In that moment, he changed his mind. He chose not to rescue him, and instead watched as the child slowly sank beneath the surface. Afterward, the boy's death was ruled an accident by the police. After all, no one could imagine that a 9-year-old child could be capable of such brutality. Yet this was only the beginning of Peter's path of crime. As he grew older, his acts became increasingly severe, and his cruelty and coldness more and more apparent. In 1901, Peter's father was exposed for what he had done to his eldest daughter and was sent to prison. Taking advantage of the situation, Peter's mother divorced this unreliable husband, and before he was even released, fled the town overnight with the children, moving to the distant city of Düsseldorf. From that point on, this beautiful city became the base for Peter's future crimes. At first, Peter committed petty theft simply for money, but as time passed, the demonic nature lurking inside him became increasingly uncontrollable. Most people commit crimes to gain something, but what made Peter truly terrifying was that he acted entirely on instinct. For him, if he went several days without doing something bad, he felt physically uncomfortable. At that time, however, he still lacked the nerve to kill at will, so he adopted a more concealed method: arson. Beginning in 1904, Peter set fires repeatedly in Düsseldorf, more than 24 cases in total. Because arson cases are difficult to investigate, it took the police over a year to arrest him. He was eventually sentenced to 8 years in prison, and he spent most of his 20s behind bars. Prison is meant to correct wrongdoing, and for those who are fundamentally good, but temporarily led astray, it can offer a chance for redemption. But for those who are inherently evil, prison only makes them more dangerous, and Peter clearly belonged to the latter group. However, what truly turned Peter into a bloodthirsty monster was an accident. At around 2 a.m. on May 25, 1913, 30-year-old Peter, newly released from prison, broke into a home intending to steal. Everything was going smoothly, but as he was leaving, the homeowner's daughter, Christine Klein, suddenly got up in the middle of the night and ran straight into him. To avoid being exposed, Peter quickly overpowered her, pressed a knife to her throat, and threatened her to stay quiet. However, Christine was so terrified that she failed to follow his commands and struggled desperately. In the chaos, Peter accidentally slit her throat, and blood immediately sprayed everywhere. This was Peter's first killing. For an ordinary person, the first sight of blood spraying would have caused their legs to give out in terror. But Peter was the complete opposite. When he saw the red liquid splatter, he experienced an unprecedented sense of excitement. To keep that pleasure going and see more blood, he even inflicted 24 additional stab wounds on Christine after she was already dead, simply to relive that thrill. Not only that, Peter later often appeared at Christine's grave, satisfying his pathological cravings by replaying the scene of that night in his mind. From that moment on, it was as if Peter had opened a door to a demonic world, completely transforming into a madman obsessed with blood. He began carrying out indiscriminate killings without restraint. Investigations show that over the course of the following year, he attacked no fewer than 15 victims, spanning all age groups and even including men. Peter killed neither for money nor for sex, but solely to smell blood again and to enjoy the thrill of holding power over life and death. To him, it made absolutely no difference whether his victims were male or female, young or old. Because of this, the police investigation was extremely difficult. Random murders with no clear motive are notoriously hard to solve. Moreover, Germany had never seen a serial killer before, so each case was investigated separately, making it even harder to connect the dots. It wasn't until a year later that police finally found a witness who linked one of the cases to Peter. Just as authorities were preparing to verify the lead, World War I broke out in full, and Peter was temporarily conscripted, allowing him to narrowly escape the investigation. Based on historical experience, most murderers are extremely cowardly by nature, and serial killers are no exception. Sending Peter to charge into battle and fight enemies to the death was something he simply could not do, so he deserted. At the time, Germany had almost zero tolerance for deserters, and Peter was sent straight to prison by a military officer. He was not released until 6 years later, after the war ended. However, 6 years behind bars did not make Peter reform. On the contrary, it only intensified his craving for blood. Once released, he could hardly wait to start killing again. Unlike before, when he randomly targeted isolated victims, Peter now believed that approach had too low a success rate. After all, more than a century ago, people rarely lingered on the streets late at night. So after his release, he began wearing suits, slicking back his hair with pomade, and dressing himself up as a gentleman. His plan was to court single women and then lure them to secluded places to attack them. It must be said that after this transformation, Peter truly looked the part of a gentleman, well-dressed, soft-spoken, and refined, giving no hint that he was a terrifying monster. As a result, his first prey soon appeared. This time, however, Peter did not harm her, because he was deeply intrigued by her identity. Her name was Auguste Scharf, 41 years old. 10 years earlier, she had been deceived and exploited, both financially and sexually, by a scoundrel for 8 years. When Auguste finally learned the truth and could no longer endure his behavior, she killed him and was subsequently sent to prison. When she met Peter, Auguste had only just been released. Moreover, it was precisely her past as a murderer that fascinated Peter, leading him to believe they were made for each other. The two soon entered into marriage and rented a home in Düsseldorf to start a family. However, Peter never revealed his true nature to his wife, nor did having a family cause him to stop his crimes. In the years that followed, Peter launched the most intense crime spree of his life. Hidden behind his gentlemanly facade, he successfully carried out dozens of murders. At the same time, he did not neglect arson, theft, and sexual assaults. But because Peter had grown increasingly cautious by this point, meticulously preparing before each crime, and burying the bodies in extremely hidden locations, the police for a long time only knew that the city had a large number of missing persons. They never suspected that a serial killer was hiding among them. It was not until many years later that Peter's crimes were finally exposed by accident. In January 1929, a shepherd went up into the mountains to hunt and unexpectedly noticed that something seemed to be buried beneath the ground under a tree. When he stepped closer to take a look, he was shocked to see a human hand protruding from the soil. He immediately called the police. After excavation, police discovered a total of 3 female bodies in the nearby wooded area. Forensic examinations revealed that each of the bodies had more than 20 wounds. However, what kind of weapon had caused these injuries remained unclear for a long time. Judging from the shape of the wounds and the pattern of tearing, the weapon did not match any commonly known sharp instrument. Moreover, there were numerous bite marks on each victim's body. This bizarre discovery made the case extremely difficult to understand, and investigators had no idea where to begin. Just as the police were completely at a loss, a couple suddenly came to the station to report that they had seen a monster. This takes us back to the night of February 3rd, 1929. That night, Peter used his personal charm to lure a woman named Apollonia into a patch of bushes, where he brutally murdered her. But he did not leave afterward. Instead, he slowly bent down toward the victim's body. Soon, in the silent air, a faint slurping sound could be heard. Peter was actually drinking the victim's blood. At that very moment, the couple happened to pass by and stumbled upon this horrifying scene. At the same time, Peter noticed someone approaching. Startled, he instinctively turned his face, covered in bright red blood, toward the couple. Imagine seeing such a terrifying sight in the dead of night, only to have a man with a blood-smeared face suddenly staring at you. Anyone would be scared out of their wits, and the couple was no exception. They let out piercing screams and fled the scene in panic, scrambling away in terror. Peter himself was no better off. Realizing his depraved act had been discovered, he panicked and ran as well, leaving the victim's body behind, and even abandoning the murder weapon at the scene. Afterward, the couple reported what they had seen to the police. Guided by their account, officers quickly arrived at the crime scene and found a blood-stained pair of tailor's scissors lying beside the body. Forensic analysis later confirmed that these scissors were indeed the murder weapon. Even more startling was the fact that the wounds on the victim found in the bushes were identical to those on the 3 bodies discovered days earlier. All 4 victims also bore the same bite marks. Combined with the eyewitness descriptions, police finally realized that a serial killer, one who behaved like a vampire, was hiding in this beautiful city. It was from this moment that the name, the Vampire of Düsseldorf, was born. The news spread rapidly throughout the town, plunging the entire city into panic. As rumors were embellished and exaggerated, the story grew more and more outrageous. Eventually, Peter was transformed in the public imagination into a genuine blood-sucking monster. Once night fell, Düsseldorf became almost a ghost city. No one, man or woman, dared to go outside. This severely disrupted the city's production, tourism, and daily life. As a result, the police treated the case with the utmost seriousness and mobilized all available forces to hunt down the killer. Yet luck seemed to favor the wicked once again. This time, Peter managed to evade the investigation yet again, thanks to the unexpected appearance of a mentally disturbed individual who diverted police attention. After news of Peter's blood-drinking crime spread, a man named Hans Strasberg actually began imitating Peter and committing murders himself. However, he clearly lacked Peter's counter-investigation abilities, so he was quickly arrested by the police. During subsequent interrogations, Hans took responsibility for all of the murders. Given the limited forensic technology available more than a century ago, combined with the fact that Hans's methods closely resembled Peter's, the police believed his confession. They promptly announced to the public that the killer had been captured and halted the investigation. Logically, with someone else taking the blame for his crimes, Peter should have been pleased, but in reality, it was quite the opposite. In his mind, this was nothing less than stealing his spotlight. So he immediately wrote a letter to the police, including the location of a hidden body and claiming that a woman's corpse was buried there. Following the map provided in the letter, police did indeed find the body of a woman named Maria. As officers excavated the remains, Peter blended into the surrounding crowd and watched from nearby. He even discussed the case with other onlookers, and whenever someone cursed the killer for being cruel, he would feel an inexplicable surge of excitement. He soon sent another letter to the police, revealing the burial site of yet another victim. Once again, he stood silently nearby, watching. In fact, this was far from the first time Peter had done such a thing. In the past, after setting fires, he would also mix into the crowds of onlookers to observe the scene. Sometimes he even joined well-meaning citizens in putting out the fire, then drank with them afterward while discussing the case. He was deeply addicted to the feeling of manipulating others at will, which was precisely why Peter deliberately wrote letters to provoke the police. But this was only the first step. To make authorities realize that the vampire of Düsseldorf was still at large, Peter actually increased the frequency of his crimes during this sensitive period. Only this time, he switched his weapon to an axe. The previously used Kaiser scissors were a commemorative item rarely found on the market, and the only one had already been taken back to the police station as evidence, leaving him no choice but to change weapons. What did not change was that every body still bore numerous bite marks, and he no longer made any effort to conceal the corpses. Eventually, the police had to admit that they had arrested the wrong man. This plunged a population that had just begun to calm down back into panic, and many wealthy residents even moved away from Düsseldorf. Left with no other option, the police launched the most intensive manhunt in their history, conducting door-to-door checks on every resident in the city. Yet even after going to such lengths, they still failed to find Peter. At the time, there was no concept of a criminal record database, so Peter was not treated as a special suspect. Moreover, he had changed so much over the years that even the officers who had once arrested him might not have recognized him. Secondly, in everyone's eyes, Peter was a gentle, well-mannered gentleman. Even the wife who shared his bed had no idea who he truly was. As a result, when police investigated him, they received almost nothing but positive feedback. Coupled with Peter's exceptional ability to disguise himself, after just a brief casual chat, investigators all but completely ruled him out as a suspect. And so, despite long and exhaustive efforts, the police still failed to identify the real killer. All residents continued to live in constant fear, and the more frightened they became, the more excited Peter felt. As a result, during his next crimes, Peter added a new perverse twist. Each time he successfully gained someone's trust, he would smile and ask, "Aren't you afraid that I might be the vampire of Düsseldorf?" Then when the two were alone, Peter would suddenly reveal his identity and kill the victim as terror filled their face. But justice never truly stays absent. Even if you are favored by fate after committing evil again and again, luck will eventually run out. And so, not long afterward, while carrying out what would become his final crime, Peter finally exposed himself. It was May 14th, 1930. Peter was at the train station looking for a target when he quickly set his sights on a woman traveling alone named Maria Batilis. Disguising himself as a wealthy gentleman, he swiftly gained Maria's trust and invited her back to his home as a guest. This was the first time Peter had ever brought a target to his own house. According to Peter's later account, it was because he was especially taken by Maria's appearance and wanted to experience a real romance with her, rather than simply obtaining another soulless body. For that very reason, Peter did nothing that night. He merely chatted casually with Maria for a while and then prepared to walk her home. However, while passing through a secluded path, Peter was unable to restrain his demonic nature and violently assaulted Maria. Perhaps because Peter truly felt a special attachment to her, he did not harm her this time and allowed her to leave alive. He was also not overly concerned that Maria would go to the police. Social attitudes at the time were still quite conservative, and once such an incident became public, it was usually the woman who suffered the greater harm. Just as Peter expected, Maria ultimately chose not to report the crime. However, in order to release the pain and humiliation in her heart, she wrote down the ordeal in a letter and mailed it to her closest friend. What no one could have imagined was that Maria accidentally wrote down the wrong address when sending the letter, causing it to end up in the hands of a police officer. After reading its contents, the officer immediately suspected that the perpetrator might be the vampire of Düsseldorf they had been desperately searching for. He was convinced that during a time when everyone lived in fear, no one except the real killer would dare commit such a crime. The police immediately located Maria and, following her guidance, went to Peter's home to investigate. In a storage room, they ultimately found a small axe. After comparison, it was confirmed to be the weapon used in all the recent murders. The police then created a sketch of Peter based on descriptions from nearby residents, and Maria sealed off all major intersections and issued a citywide manhunt for him. Yet at such a dangerous moment, instead of hiding properly, Peter secretly returned home a few days later to see his wife, Auguste. He confessed to her that he was the vampire of Düsseldorf. He told her where he was currently hiding and asked that after he left, she personally go to the police and report him. Peter knew he was now worth a great deal of money. Anyone who helped the police capture him would receive a substantial cash reward. Realizing there was no way for him to escape, he hoped to leave his wife a sum of money before his death so she could live well in the future. After learning that her husband was truly the vampire of Düsseldorf that everyone feared, Auguste was overwhelmed with conflicting emotions, fear, sorrow, and shock all at once. Yet in the end, all of those feelings turned into deep devotion. She immediately asked to flee together with Peter and said that if one day he was found by the police, she would be willing to end her life alongside him. But Peter would not agree to let his wife follow him into hell. In the end, he left alone, and before departing, he once again urged her that no matter what, she must go to the police station the next day and report him. In this way, following Auguste's report, the police finally arrested Peter on May 24, 1930. After his arrest, Peter offered no resistance or denial during interrogation and immediately confessed to all of his crimes. Only then did the police realize that his atrocities went far beyond what they had previously known. According to Peter himself, between 1925 and 1930 alone, he committed a total of 31 murders. When combined with the crimes he had committed earlier, the total number of people he killed was at least over 50, and that was only the victims he could still remember. If his assaults, thefts, arson, attempted murders, and other offenses were all counted, then from the age of 9 to that point, Peter's total number of crimes had already exceeded 200. For this reason, he is widely recognized as Germany's first serial killer. In the end, on April 22, 1931, Peter Kürten was sentenced to death by the court on 9 counts of murder. At 7 a.m. on July 2, 1931, he was sent to the guillotine, bringing his life of crime to an end. Afterward, however, German scientists rushed to obtain Peter's head. According to authoritative psychiatric evaluations, Peter suffered from no mental illness, meaning that all of his crimes were committed of his own free will. In other words, he was purely brutal. This was precisely why many scientists wanted to study him, hoping to uncover the reasons behind his extreme evil. At the same time, some people believe that Peter might truly have been a kind of mutant with an abnormal craving for blood. Otherwise, how could a normal person be so obsessed with a red liquid? Even in today's technologically advanced 21st century, many people still hold this belief. As a result, after Peter's death, his head was transferred among major research institutions across Germany. Even after it had dried out, it was never discarded, but instead preserved as a specimen. It was not until World War II that the skull made its way to the United States, where it was ultimately acquired by the Ripleys, believe it or not, museum, where it remains to this day.